Hey, so this is Craig Seibert, and this is America 250 Organic. And I am here at Moores Creek Bridge National Battlefield. And they're getting ready to celebrate the 250th year anniversary of the first patriotic victory in the American Revolution, the decisive victory that happened here at Moores Creek Bridge. And so we're going to explore this 250 years ago today. And all over this area, longleaf pine grew, which was a great economic boon to the eastern part of North Carolina. Uh, these pine were great for ship masts, and the tar and the pitch and the rosin were all used in the shipbuilding trade. The pitch sealed wood and kept it waterproof. The tar provided a stickiness and a grip, and rosin would provide both lubrication as well as other aspects to the naval shipbuilding of both the British Empire and then eventually the American Navy as it was developed. Also very wet area too. And the only way to move wood products around this particular region was through swamp creeks and small to get out the wood products to the coast because there was not a large ability to build roads through this area that were serviceable. There were roads, but a lot of the wood products, because of their weight and the difficulty of navigating them over roads, were navigated through streams, rivers, and swamps. So let's continue on this path and get down to the battleground area and talk about it. So behind me, this stretch of terrain is called the Black River Road. And it was really the only land path or land road that blocked access from the Loyalists encamped around Fayetteville in Wilmington, North Carolina. And so let's go over to this marquee here behind me and get a little overview of this battle and understanding more what took place here. And I think this is very helpful and very descriptive. So it says Patriot and Loyalist forces marched along the sandy road that lies before you called the Black River Road. It linked the interior of North Carolina to the coast, the destination of the Loyalist Army led by General Donald McDonald. By late February 1776, it was the last direct route not blocked by the Patriots. So the arrival of troops at Moores Creek followed weeks of maneuvering. Like players at chess, one side moved and the other countered. The Loyalists intended to join a British fleet near Wilmington, but the Patriots blocked their way at Cross Creek. Finding themselves outnumbered, the Patriots made a calculated withdrawal in front of the Loyalists, cutting all the bridges as they passed. Knowing that Moores Creek provided the last defensible position before Wilmington, a plan was devised using terrain and guile to lure the Loyalists, now led by Captain Donald McLeod, into a trap. Here, real quickly in a map, this is described. So Alexander Lillington and James Moore, both Patriot forces, left Wilmington and marched up to Cross Creek, where General Donald McDowell and 1,500 Loyalist men were blocked. Meanwhile, over New Bern, Richard Caswell marched with 850 men and were going to intercept McLeod and stop him at a place called Corbett's Ferry, but they missed him there. So as Lillington and his men retreated and took up position here at Moores Creek Bridge, Colonel Caswell joined him there for a total Patriot force of about 1,000 people. Meanwhile, McDonald's men, he left half of his force. There was about 3,000 Loyalists that had gathered in Fayetteville. He left about 1,400 men there and proceeded with 1,600 men down here to Moores Creek Bridge. What we'll learn in a minute is of those 1,600 men, he released 50 into an advance force, and that's where our story will pick up on the geographic terrain here. So walk with me now as we walk toward Moores Creek Bridge. Creek Bridge. The Loyalists were coming down this way. The Patriots had set up a deceptive camp here in the middle of the night, they had left this camp, but with fires burning to look like it was still occupied. And also they had been working on these earthworks the day before, so that ultimately in these earthworks here, as the Loyalists would cross over this bridge, they could get trapped. They would be trapped as they came into this ambush area. They took planks. They took planks out of the bridge, and then they also greased the girders. So this bridge was very hard to cross. And we'll take a look at what that looks like now. We're standing behind these earthworks right here as we look out. So right out here are those earthworks. And the Patriot cause had 2 cannons, which the Loyalist cause did not. So if you can imagine the 1,000 Patriots over here hidden behind these earthworks, these all loaded with their own arms and weapons, these cannons with a field shot that had the effect of being like a shotgun coming out of the cannon, would just decimate anybody that would be coming toward them. And so this was the ambush area that we're standing in, where 50 Loyalists got decimated. 30 were almost killed instantly with the first round of firing. This battle only lasted 3 minutes or less. And so it was decisive in that way. And on the other side of the bridge, realizing what had happened, the other Loyalists began to disperse. So this is what it would have looked like behind that cannon and behind these earthworks as the Loyalists began to cross over the bridge at 4:30 in the morning. This is the other cannon that was here, a swivel cannon. But these are the earthworks the Patriots lied behind 250 years ago. So here's the path up to Moores Creek Bridge, and I'm on the eastern side. To my back is Wilmington. And this is where the bridge was crossed. And as we were just standing up there, this is where the battle took place. I want to read about this marker right here and then talk about this battle a little bit more. The Battle of Moores Creek Bridge, February 27, 1776. Here stood the bridge of Revolutionary fame. Under Colonels Richard Caswell and Alexander Lillington, defeated 1,600 Loyalists led by Captain McLeod. So if you can just imagine this bridge, the brackish waters of this area, the swamps, and again, as we were talking about earlier, the longleaf pine that was in this area was an amazing economic boon for North Carolina because ship masts were built. The tar, pitch, and resin were all used in shipbuilding. And this is how they would move the product, the heavy wood, to the coast through these streams, creeks, and rivers. So now we're on the west side of the bridge, and we're looking in the direction, the west, from which the Loyalist brigade would have marched from Fayetteville. We're looking off toward Fayetteville. They would have left an encampment about 6 miles down this road. About 6 miles down this road, they began marching at 1 o'clock in the morning and arrived in this area that we're looking at around 4:30 in the morning. On this western side of the river, there was an encampment that was made by the patriotic forces. Tents were set up. Fires were burning. When the Loyalists arrived, they were surprised that the Patriots were not in the camp. Well, the Patriots had already crossed earlier to these earthworks that we had looked at before. And in their crossing, if you can imagine, they pulled the planks out of this bridge, all of them. There's no siding that they left on there. And then they also greased the girders of this bridge. And so it was really difficult to cross. The Loyalists determined that they would send several men across, very precarious. Some believe that more than a few might have fallen off and even drowned in this brackish, dark, black water. But about 50 got across. believing that the two sentries that they had seen on this side of the bridge were the rear guard of the Patriot Army that was in retreat. They proceeded to gather here, 50 of them, and then they made the determination that they should pursue the Patriots. The Highlander Scots, who used the broadsword as their battle weapon, determined that they were going to chase down these two sentries, and the retreating Patriot army shouted, "King George and broadswords," and they began to make their way quickly down into this area that we had looked at before. All of a sudden, they heard shots fired. They realized that they were entrapped. They were about to be decimated by the cannons and the 1,000 men that were behind these earthworks. And this placard speaks to that. By the time they reached this spot, McLeod's loyalists realized they were in a trap, but had no choice except to charge the earthworks, broadswords in hand. The morning mist exploded with the blast of hundreds of muskets and 2 cannon. A torrent of lead hit the loyalists. Captain McLeod lay dying near the spot, 30 paces from the Patriot earthworks. After a second blast, their advance was stopped cold. Outgunned, stunned, and leaderless, they retreated in disorder. This decisive battle had profound consequences for North Carolina and for the American Revolution. For the Scots-Irish Highlanders, it would mark their last broadsword charge in their long and proud history. And so that is what happened here. 2 patriots were wounded, and 1 died of his wounds. And we're going to take a look at that memorial marker now. Here's another pictograph that does well in exploring what this would have looked like. From their well-defended positions, hundreds of patriots trained their guns on the loyalist Scots, who charged from the shadows in the light of dawn, but bravery and broadswords were no match for muskets and cannon. Within seconds, the front ranks of the loyalists were decimated. Some lay dead below the earthworks, while others drowned in Moores Creek. In all, more than 30 loyalists perished. Patriot losses were 1 dead and 1 wounded. After the battle, Patriots captured hundreds of loyalists, large quantities of weapons and supplies that amounted to more than $13 million in today's money. The Battle of Moores Creek undermined royal hopes that the armies of loyalists throughout the South would join British troops to quell the growing rebellion. That fact alone made the Southern British strategy that Cornwallis had devised of gathering loyalists in the South and regaining the command of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia was squelched. And the Patriot cause survived and was inspired by what took place here at the Battle of Moores Creek. Here's a great summary of what happened afterwards. The Loyalists who survived the Battle of Moores Creek were unable to mount another offensive. Within 4 months, the British fleet, which had sailed on without the Loyalist volunteers, was repulsed. The defeat of the Southern campaign convinced the British to concentrate on fighting the rebellion in the North. The Patriot victory at Moores Creek tipped the scales in North Carolina. On April 12, 1776, the North Carolina Provincial Congress adopted the Halifax Resolves, making North Carolina the first colony to instruct its delegates to the Second Continental Congress to vote for independence. Resolved that the delegates for this colony in the Continental Congress be empowered to concur with the delegates of other colonies in declaring independency and forming foreign alliances. The Halifax Resolves. So here, as we approach this monument, this is really significant. It memorializes the battle. It was put here on the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Moores Creek, and it honors Private John Grady, who was the first one to fall in North Carolina fighting for the American Revolution, and he died here in the cause of freedom. So what's remarkable about this spot is this was the place that patriots in the early 1800s would bring their children. And then as they aged, they'd bring their children and grandchildren to memorialize this historic and decisive battle that not only set the tone for North Carolina, and the South in general, and convinced the British Army that they needed to focus their military operations in the North. But it excited the American cause in such a fashion with this decisive victory, the Americans in other colonies began to believe that it was possible that the American cause would win the day in the fight for liberty. One of the things that's remarkable about this battle is its remoteness and the fact that in these remote places with unknown men, great things can happen. Amazing things can happen. And it just reminds you that it does not always have to be in the big things of the day, the notable areas, but each of us in our small ways and in our small efforts doing one thing at a time can make an impact for liberty. So as we finish up our 250 Organic here at Moores Creek Battleground, let's offer a word of prayer for these patriots that believed in our cause and laid down their life in defense of liberty. So Heavenly Father, we thank you for this place, the Moores Creek battlefield, and for the patriot forces here that were determined to have liberty and took a bold stand that not only turned the South from going loyalist and possibly crushing or diminishing the American Revolution, but in fact created the opposite, a wildfire of enthusiasm as the word of this decisive patriotic victory, the first in the American Revolution, spread throughout the colonies and gave great hope that the colonists would prevail. So we thank you, Lord, for the sacred ground where those that were opposed to one another knew one another and were kin in many ways, and yet they were on different sides of the question of liberty. Lord, help us as a nation today to take up the standard again and to be courageous in our fight for liberty. So my name's Craig Seibert. This is another 250 Organic, and I thank Christian Civics Training and Patriot Academy for all the work that they do in advancing the cause of liberty in our land. Thanks. Bye.